Greetings, my dear friends. The year 2020 will be known for one of the greatest, how should I put it, presents China has ever made to the world, the Wuhan virus. Under pressure of China, this was renamed COVID 19. However, Wuhan virus, it will always be. The Wuhan virus brought the world to its knees. 179 million people were affected, 3.9 million dead, trillions of dollars of economies or economic progress perished. This also marked the culmination of the dream which China tried to paint as the peaceful rise of the Chinese dragon. It made its intentions of aggression, its aspirations, very, very clear that it wanted to dominate the world. Its aggression and arm twisting across the globe was unprecedented by any stretch. Whether it was global institutions like the WHO, the United Nations, and don't forget, the United Nations has yet to discuss the Wuhan virus. Whether it was the South China Sea or the East China Sea, with a fight with Japan, Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, Korea, you name it, or it was fighting nations from the US to the European Union, from Australia to Taiwan, from New Zealand, and a physical eyeball to eyeball confrontation with India for the first time in decades. Actually, after the Vietnam fiasco, China got a bloody nose. It realized, and it made the world also realize, that the Chinese PLA soldier is not as invincible as they make it out to be. And India stared down China dramatically, unexpectedly. The first anniversary of the attack at Galwan is as good a time as any other to review our conflict with China, the attack at Galwan and its aftermath, and see how does it affect India in particular, the world at large. Welcome to Chax Simplifies, your channel to demystify and simplify complex geopolitical issues. I, Commander Chakrapani, or Chax, am your host. The geopolitics have changed. One dramatic year, and it has created an upheaval of uncommon proportions as far as the world is concerned. Let us try and understand this geopolitical shift. Also, let's understand what were China's objectives. Did China actually achieve them? Did China anticipate the global pushback? And let's also understand what is India's role in checkmating or countervailing China. Finally, where do we go from here and what is likely to happen? Do a little bit of crystal ball gazing. So let's take a look at what happened in very quick timeline. This clash at Galwan was the first clash that India has had with China wherein physical armed clash happened since 1975. Let's go back a bit, do a bit of rewind, and in February, March, April, China started the PLA army exercises in Tibet. It said that these exercises are routine and are not meant to threaten anyone. So much so that even Russia thought they were so. However, in sometime in end April, Chinese army did a pivot and entered multiple locations as far as India is concerned across the line of actual control. predominantly in the Pengongso area, which is the finger area of the Pengongso, Galwan, at Gogra Hot Springs, and it was already sitting in Depsang. It just fortified its positions there. On the 5th of May, there was a violent confrontation between rival patrols near the Finger Four area of the Pengongso. There was a diversionary confrontation or a skirmish, if you will, at Nakula in Sikkim on the 9th of May. There were reports already in the Indian press and media. Opposition parties are also kicking up a ruckus to say that China has intruded into India. However, the government decided that it will play these down and try and handle these issues diplomatically. On the 8th of May, in a press conference, the Ministry of External Affairs spokesperson maintained that there were enough bilateral mechanisms to resolve the border issue between India and China diplomatically. On the 30th of May, the defense minister also says bilateral talks at the diplomatic and military level have begun. On the 2nd of June, Major General level talks happened at the border personnel meeting points. Thereafter, these devolved to brigadier and colonel level. On the 6th of June, the first Corps commander level meeting happened at the Chushul Moldo border meeting point, and they agreed on de-escalation starting from Galwan, Gogra and Hot Springs area. On the 15th, 16th of June, there was this Galwan Valley clash, where Colonel Suresh Babu, the commanding officer of the 16 Bihar, was martyred. India reported 20 casualties. China, none. However, reports of over 100 casualties from the Chinese side started coming in the papers and media thereafter. Surprising was the fact that many of these casualties happened deep inside Chinese lines. On the 17th of June, the Indian Prime Minister addressed the nation regarding the Galwan clash, and on the same day, the Chinese Foreign Minister Yang Yi actually warned India. There were talks for de-escalation, nothing really happened. On the 3rd of July, the Indian Prime Minister visited military posts in Ladakh and said the age of expansionism is over. On the night of 29th and 30th August, Indian Army takes over the Kailash Ranges, the heights of the Kailash Ranges in the southern bank of the Pengongso. For the first time, a face-off with PLA happened on the southern banks. On the 7th of September, warning shots were fired. Again, this was the first time where weapons were actually fired at the LAC. On the 22nd of September, there was a 6th round of military level commanders taking place, and first time ever, there was a representative of the Ministry of External Affairs. There are a few incidents of the Chinese soldiers straying into India, or so-called straying into India, on the 19th of October and on the 9th of November. These soldiers were subsequently returned. On the 20th of November, a minor border clash took place once again at Nakula in Sikkim. In some form, China trying to divert attention from the Ladakh to other sectors. Both armies now worked out their plans to live through the cold winter. While the winter was freezing, the borders were freezing, there were other things that started happening in quick time. On the 10th of February, TASS, that is the Russian news agency, reported 45 PLA soldiers were killed in Galwan. On the 11th of June, there was this initial disengagement of Indian and Chinese troops near the Pengongso Finger area. China, for the first time in decades, withdrew beyond Finger 8 in the northern bank. India came down from the Kailash ranges. On the 19th of February, China accepted the death of 4 soldiers in the Galwan clash. On the 22nd of February, at a pace which was nothing short of dramatic, both Indian and Chinese troops complete the pullback from the Pengongso area. On 23rd of May, there were reports that there was a minor clash once again in the Galwan area. However, this was denied by the Indian army subsequently. So what is happening now? Let's put this status into 3 basic buckets. One, tactical, which affects exactly what is happening on ground. Second, tactical yet with some strategic implications. And third, the strategic implications. So what is happening on the tactical level? Disengagement, we have a stalemate. Disengagement of forces has happened only in the Finger area, where China has withdrawn to beyond Finger 8 and India has come down from the Kailash ranges. Why? Because India had a direct line of sight to Moldo, which is the Chinese garrison, and Chinese felt threatened. There have been 13 rounds of Corps Commander level talks. Nothing has happened. China continues to sit as far as Depsang is concerned, as far as Gogra hot springs are concerned, and it continues to threaten the Dabruk Dolog Oldie Road. China feels sitting in Depsang will ensure India cannot threaten its own highways in the interior of Tibet. As far as de-escalation is concerned, there has been no progress. China has in fact rotated over 50% of its troops, brought in new weapons and capabilities. There are at least 60,000 troops on either side, with other assets from aircraft, missile batteries, radar units fully deployed at the line of actual control in the Ladakh area. India has beefed up its defenses across the entire border with China. The violation of all agreements to maintain peace and tranquility on the borders have made these agreements absolutely void. You will now have to redo all these agreements all over again. This has put significant economic costs as far as India is concerned. Also for China, but China being a larger economy probably will absorb them easier. It has also taken the heat of Pakistan to some extent, and Pakistan also, don't forget, proposed a ceasefire at the LOC so that it can pull out its troops and redeploy them on its western border with Afghanistan. So let's take a look at the tactical yet strategic. What is happening? Areas there. What is happening here? China continues to develop infrastructure at a breathtaking pace. 2 separate bullet train tracks have been announced to Lhasa from 2 different provinces in China. There are reports of construction of dams across the Brahmaputra in many ways to be able to threaten water wars with India. From airfields to missiles to radar sites, they're all under development in Tibet. China has also positioned long-range strategic bombers and J-20 fighters in Tibet to counter India. It is planning induction of Gorkhas and Tibetans into the People's Liberation Army to be able to counter Indian troops and overcome the basic weakness of the PLA. That is their inability to fight under extreme cold climates. It has continued to occupy territories in Nepal, Bhutan. In addition to India in Sikkim, Ladakh, Arunachal, right across the northern border, it is trying to show that it can take over. There are significant insecurities within China, and something which is not very widely known. President Xi is also under threat from the more hawkish elements of his own military. Therefore, it is not surprising that China is going after everybody at the same time. So let's see the strategic dimension of this. It has actually done a major shaking of the power balance across the globe. Chinese new muscular approach and the ability as well as the intention that it can risk a military confrontation has made China someone to be watched very, very carefully. If China ever harbored any thought that India and China could come to an understanding of sorts and India would support China in many ways, that is finished. India has lost China and so has China lost India. This bonhomie is not going to come back, not for a long time. India, don't forget, for most of last year and before that, was dithering on the Quad. It is fully committed now. Something that China did never want. Quad is now becoming a reality. Don't forget, in the very recent G7 and the NATO summits, China was called out very clearly for the first time. It reflects a global geostrategic change. The G7 25-page statement talks about shared values, open societies, human rights, rule of the law, and the need to restore autonomy of Hong Kong. The need to have a free and open Indo-Pacific. Note the nomenclature change and note the focus on Indo-Pacific. It talks about freedom of navigation, especially freedom of the Taiwan Straits, naming it. The NATO statement is also very clear. The initial parts were very, how should I put it? They spoke only of Russia and Ukraine. But para 55 starts and China's role and Chinese ambitions, assertive behaviors, the challenges it poses to the globe come out in the open. The opacity of China, the disinformation China gives out have to cease. And they brought out that the cyber, space, and maritime issues, China needs to behave like a global power, and it is now threatening NATO interests. Democracies across the globe are combining their efforts to push back China, and the focus now is squarely on the Indo-Pacific, something which China thought it would quietly be able to take over using salami slicing that it always did. So, is this the beginning of the Cold War 2.0? We can already see two camps getting prepared. One camp led by China, which has North Korea, Pakistan, Turkey, and a few other countries in its basket, and the second led by the United States. These two are vying for the superpower status, and China reasonably quickly catching up. They are both jostling for power, for influence. Yet, unlike the Cold War I, where each of the superpowers wanted to destroy the other, at least at the present time, this does not seem to be happening. So then, why did China attack India and confront India militarily? What did it seek to gain from this? Why do you think they would shoot themselves in the foot? Nobody seems to be having a focused answer. However, these are my views. China felt the world was changing. There was turmoil there. The US elections were happening, and there was going to be, or a likely change going to be, between a belligerent Trump to a mellow Biden. Pandemic had spread across the globe. Nations were focused on how to counter it. China tried to show its magnanimity by providing aid, medical, pharmaceutical. Sadly, their own PPE kits, masks, easy loan, etc., which they wanted to earn goodwill, they thought would paper over all the aggression it was showing in the South China Sea and elsewhere. Some of these kits, the PPE kits, the masks, did not really work. Don't forget, India itself was grappling with their pandemic and had gone into a lockdown. On the other hand, China was changing. China had a major demographic problem, has a major demographic problem. It is aging very, very quickly. The average female fertility ratio in China is possibly less than even 1.2, which means as we go along, China will have more and more old people and no youngsters. It sensed a very small window of opportunity to become the world leading superpower now. It needed to cement the invincible image of the PLA so that it can intimidate globally without really having to fight. Who can it do? They thought India was a pastry. Don't forget, there were other things that were happening in China. Economic growth was slowing. A monolith like the Communist Party of China can survive only when it can ensure economic prosperity in lieu of freedom of speech. But that itself was crumbling. The BRI is floundering. The Chinese bank are in danger of collapsing. There is a tension of the globe in Xinjiang as well as in Tibet, especially with the successor of Dalai Lama coming into focus even more squarely. President Xi is also facing party politics that threaten his position. Right? At the same time, India was changing too. India was making rapid changes which was making China very uncomfortable. Don't forget, just a short time back, India stood up to China in Doklam. India's focus has been on military as well as economic growth and new technologies. Don't forget, we have the Tejas, the BrahMos, the new aircraft carrier. They're all showing India's technological might in some form or the other. India was shifting its focus from the land domain to the maritime domain so that it could start really playing a role in the Indian Ocean. This China wanted to stop or deter and get India's focus back onto the northern boundaries. India was building infrastructure in the last few years, especially using Border Roads Organization. And look at the developments that have taken place across the LAC and the international border with China. Whether it was the roads in Ladakh from Daulat Beg Oldi or it was roads across Sikkim and Arunachal Pradesh. There was a change in the status of Ladakh that happened post the revocation of Article 370 and the 35A. With Ladakh becoming a union territory by itself, what would this change have or how would that affect the UN resolutions on Kashmir? If tomorrow India decides to declare Ladakh as an independent state of India and Jammu and Kashmir as another state, then this situation can really become a pickle. This would affect the status of Gilgit Baltistan because these are parts of Ladakh, not Kashmir. There's also been a strategic shift of the US to the Indo Pacific, and India, despite all its dithering, did show signs of coming on board, and it signed all the three major pacts with the US: the BECA, the LEMOA, and the COMCASA. Therefore, my belief is China decided that it had to teach India a lesson and tell it, buddy, you're all alone. Nobody can help you. And through India, signal to the rest of the world that it is a dominant military power and it can coerce militarily. So, what were the Chinese aims? I put this down into three things again, into two parts. The strategic aim was to teach India a lesson, and thereby the smaller states of the South China Sea to tell them, if India can't find us, India can't fight with us, India is on its knees with us, how dare you threaten us? It also wanted to deter India from getting into the Quad or any other alliance. It wanted to show its brotherly feelings with Pakistan and said, you will have to contend with a collusive Pakistan and China, and you will be all by yourself. Its military aims seem to be fairly limited to coercion of India, secure advantage to itself by taking over the Finger Four area that would get it very quickly into Ladakh. Also, if it stopped the patrolling beyond the Galwan Y junction, it could interdict the Darbuk Shayok Daulat Beg Goldi axis quite comfortably. It wanted to consolidate itself in Depsang. Don't forget, the Depsang plains were occupied by China way back in 2013 2015. However, Galwan upset the apple cart. The killing of the CEO of 16 Bihar and its aftermath showed China that India can take things to an extent and not more. That hardened India's position irrevocably. The capture of Kailash ranges as well as the heights over the Finger 3 and Finger 4 showed that India can take the battle into China. This, for the first time in Indian history, at least to the extent that I know, we demonstrated an all of nation approach. We carried out strikes across multiple domains. As far as the military is concerned, we matched Chinese deployment, dominated many other features, bolstered men, material, equipment. The Indian Air Force positioned itself soundly, roundly in Daulat Beg Oldi, with strike aircraft deployed in Ladakh. India showed that it would not last just one but many winters, and it commenced military exercises with Quad, neighbors, France, UK, all that. It struck digitally. It banned over 269 Chinese apps, including TikTok, WeChat, etc. It barred Chinese giants like the Huawei from 5G trials in India, dealing an economic blow. It struck on trade. As much as 40% reduction in import of Chinese products by India happened. It did various amendments to the FDI policy which would stop China from acquiring Indian companies and started a greater scrutiny of Chinese investments. At the diplomatic front, the India's vaccine diplomacy seems to be working far better than Chinese. Indian vaccines actually work. right? And don't forget, the External Affairs Minister has made it clear that there can be no progress on other issues without addressing the border issue. So, what is it that India must do or India can do as we go along? Let's take a reality check. There is a major differential in economic and military strengths as far as India and China is concerned. China is at an advantage. Therefore, India has to counter this advantage. How? Alliances. Quad is one such alliance. India has to be able to handle its own issues at home by itself and reduce its dependence in China and call out, name and shame China. What are we scared of? Right? Look at Quad. The vaccine diplomacy is also coming through Quad, and India has promised, along with the rest of the Quad, 1 billion doses by the end of 2022. There is already a talk of Quad, Quad Plus, Quad Plus Plus. I believe India should initiate a dialogue with NATO, especially after the NATO declaration where it said China is threatening NATO's interests. It should strengthen its relationship with the G7. In fact, I would go to the extent of saying India should join the G7. Don't forget, Britain did invite India. It should continue the Act East policy and allay the fears of smaller ASEAN nations by showing India as a strong, reliable partner. The standoff with China has helped bolster this muscular image that India has created for itself, both militarily as well as nationally. Our economic relationships, including the vaccine diplomacy, have to continue getting better, and with military relationship also showing its hand, the sale of BrahMos, there's a likely sale that's going to happen to Vietnam and Thailand, and Philippines is already ready to sign on the BrahMos deal. It gifted a submarine, that is INS Sindhuvir, to Myanmar and is working on road connectivity to Thailand, Cambodia through Myanmar. India is continuing its bilateral and multilateral relationships with France, Britain. Its presence in Middle East, neighbors like Maldives, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Myanmar, they all point to the same direction. It is working on decoupling from China of the supply chains. Some say India has missed the bus, some say India is just about getting into it, but let's see how it goes. But India must work on manufacturing of computer chips and high-tech area. Of course, India must review its one China policy and develop clear diplomatic relations with Taiwan. It can also take baby steps to recognize the government in exile of Tibet and the Dalai Lama. Don't forget, China is grossly water deficient and Tibet is its lifeline. This will put tremendous pressure on China. When the new J&K assembly comes up, in the last assembly there were empty seats for the representatives from Gilgit-Baltistan, Azad Kashmir. Pakis call it Azad Kashmir, we call it Pak-occupied Kashmir. We must now actually fill those vacancies. Should India allow China to enter into Afghanistan, suck up China into Afghanistan? Don't forget, Afghanistan has the reputation of being graveyard of empires. Recently, the Soviet Union learnt it, so did the US. And it should work with like-minded democracies to restructure the United Nations as a first step, the WHO and the WTO thereafter. India and the world are at crossroads. The global perceptions of China have changed irrevocably since the Wuhan virus. A new world order, which is based on rules, is on the cards, and the alternative is the hegemony of China. Will there be new global institutions or will there be military alliances? What would be the contours of the geopolitical balance, and will the Cold War 2.0 commence? How will China react to all of this? Will China, like the old Soviet Union, also break up? So, folks, we continue to live in very interesting times. India's economic and geopolitical interests are also dependent on what stand we take, whether we ally to the West or bow to China, whether we balance the two of them and try and walk the tightrope, which we tried many years, for many times with the non-alignment. My view, that would be an idiotic thing to do. The next few years will give us a clearer picture on how all of this will shape up. If you like the video, approve of the video, please leave a like and please do comment. As always, don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you have not already subscribed, and press the bell icon to be notified of all new videos. Please feel free to share, like this video to your friends, and I look forward, as always, to your suggestions and continued support. Till next time, Jai Hind.